Just setting it up, I think. Just waiting. It's probably saying streaming.
Mine says meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. I don't know if you see the same thing.
Yes. Good morning, Tanya. Thank you so much for joining me here in my Compassionate TTC community here on Facebook. As we were just saying, this topic, infertility and grief, has generated a bit of interest in the group, and I'm not surprised because it is something we experience when things don't go to plan, without doubt. So I'll just introduce you and then I'll hand over for you to talk through, and then I'll just interrupt with any questions that I have. But we're joined here by Tanya Hoskin today. Tanya works with women who are going through one of life's big transitions. She helps them navigate the often overwhelming, painful, and growth-provoking periods in our lives. Think about all the huge and transformation touch points: adulthood, trying to conceive, motherhood, separation and divorce, and the experience of losing someone dear to us. Having been through many losses herself, all while trying to figure this mothering thing out, Tanya decided to retrain as a therapist. So Tanya is now forging a career supporting clients through the tough and messy moments of life. And she's here to talk to us today about grief, how this might be showing up in your life, and you may not even realize, and that's so true. She'll be discussing the different types of grief, in particular the ones most common in the trying to conceive journey, and how that may be affecting your relationship. And lastly, she'll be sharing ways to support you processing your grief that are compassionate, gentle, and won't floor you in your effort to move forward. That sounds amazing. So welcome, Tanya, and thank you. Over to you to get us started.
Okay. I wanted to start today by talking about two types of grief that are often, by their very nature, not spoken about, not acknowledged. Sometimes really hard to spot because because of their nature. So the first one is disenfranchised grief, and disenfranchised grief is often, not socially acknowledged, not publicly mourned, isn't seen to be a loss significant of grieving.
Yeah.
And so all these constructs kind of keep this grief, like for individuals, unacknowledged. Like they might be having these feelings, these emotions, these experiences, but because there isn't that validation, because there isn't that normalization, because there isn't other people going, oh, I feel that way too, they can do a range of things and, internalize their own experience through grief. And it's a really lonely.
They might kind of go, oh, this is silly. Why am I feeling this way? I've got all these different things. Why would I be feeling this way? Let's just think positive kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and it can be that. It can be comparing your grief to someone else's and seeing it as not as significant or not as important, and often that is determined by culture, family, society, rather than the individual. So, grief, I'm going to touch on one model. There's millions of them. There's not really millions. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of theories. There's a lot of ways that people try and conceptualize it, different processes or modalities that can support people to work through it. And in the end, it comes back to the individual in terms of whether they see it as grief, whether they experience it as grief, how significant it is to them. And that can then, that alone can lead to difference in relationship. What might be significant for you might not be for your partner.
Yeah.
So that's where, more relationship or interpersonal disconnect can happen there. The other one is compounding grief, where depending on what else you have going on in your life, working through loss, potentially, miscarriage, or, even every cycle of not conceiving, of that in itself, you as an individual may have the resilience, skills, support to work through. You know, when that happens multiple times, when that is on, you know, when there's perhaps other things going on in your life, you know, maybe your parents are getting really old and you're seeing them deteriorate and you're starting that grieving process. Perhaps, you know, in the job market at the moment, perhaps your work is really, what's the word? Unstable, it's changing, there's not that safety, you know, you're not feeling held in that element. And then, you know, perhaps through this whole process, your relationship is changing and there's grief going around that. So it's kind of like this layered effect. So any one of these individually, you may have the skills and you know what, you'd work through it. But when they start layering on top of each other, that's when, you know, they can become really overwhelming, really unmanageable. Life can get really hard.
Yeah.
So I guess they're the two that I wanted to touch on today. I'm just looking at my notes, the next bit I think I'll go to is in relation to disenfranchised grief, and kind of pull that apart a bit more, because especially for this community, you know, I think of grief and it's not something that we're particularly skilled up in or had modelled to us how to support someone who's grieving. You know, kids are often not invited to funerals, and you know, like, it's not something that we're flooded with resources and information and different ideas about a whole life, so that when we get to this point, we're really skilled up and we know what to do. When you're trying to conceive, I was thinking about this in writing these notes. The very social norm and I don't know where this came from, rule that you do not tell anyone until you've reached the 12-week mark. That in itself is just setting us up to not feel worthy of support, or not to be able to share. You know, everything has to be kept a secret. You don't tell anyone.
It's funny, isn't it?
And that's fine. Yeah, and that's once you've become pregnant. Even before, like, so before then, you know, it's very much, you know, a process between you and your partner, or that's something, you know, that you keep behind closed doors. And that's why I think this community is so important, so that people, I don't know about you, Belinda, but my first 12 weeks were the hardest of the whole pregnancy. And I think I got to week 9 and I thought, who is this serving not telling anyone? Because it's certainly not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, for you?
I definitely. And I think the social norm is an interesting one, because as you said, like in most situations, having that support there and be able to communicate it with people and share with people is so important. Having that support network. I think it almost feels like there's 3 elements to this, because there's, you know, what you're talking about is the normal pregnancy process, that first 3 months is pretty crap, and being able to go to someone, oh my goodness, like, how is it physically possible to feel seasick 24/7 for, you know, 6 whole plus weeks, and some women have it for 20 plus weeks. And then you have the group of women who have been through so many losses that they don't tell it to anyone until they physically, like, they can't hide it anymore, because it's so hard for them to share again another loss. So, but if they were supported right from the first place and people weren't uncomfortable with that loss, then they would have that support. It's that as you were saying, people aren't used to grief. They don't know about grief. They don't know how to support grief. They're uncomfortable with someone else's grief.
Yes, yes. And often there's the actual loss, and then there's tangible and intangible elements to that, and there's secondary losses that you know. And I think the more that we can open up the conversation and kind of like turn up our empathy dials and be compassionate and be able to meet people where they are. Like, even I think of groups of friends and my own, like there's different people and different journeys. There's the sense of, you know, I know there's some people who don't want to be asked every time we catch up how that's going. And because of that, you know, that fear of, oh, you know, I can't really commit and be joyous about this until I reach a certain point, and I can't sit with your joy or happiness or excitement because, you know, there's a lot on the line for me. But people being brave enough, I guess, to try, to know, to ask where the line is. Is this something I don't want to not talk about it, but I don't want to bring it up every time if that's, you know, how would you like me to check in with you?
That's right. Yeah. You
know, is it a call? Is it a text message? Is it whatever it is, but asking the person what it is that they want, how they feel supported, and what they don't find supportive. You know, sometimes that really like positive, like, okay, can be really helpful, and sometimes it can be really like it's the biggest miss ever, and it can be really crushing. So yeah, it's a bit like grief, right? It's going to be an individual experience. The best thing is just to walk towards and know that it might be a bit clunky, it might be a bit messy, you know, but just keep asking questions. And if you do have your empathy dial turned up nice and high, it's going to be hard to get it wrong.
That's right. And it might just be sitting with them. It might just literally sitting there in silence together, you know, in the whole.
Yeah. Which again is something that some people find really hard. And that on that point, you know, pick people that can, or, you know, like see where the line is for different people. You might have friends that you just know, no matter how messy, no matter how bad, you can just crash and land right there and they're good. And other ones you might just want to pace yourself out of self-care and looking after yourself.
As the carer touching in with someone, you mean?
No, as the individual experiencing grief. So, you know, be open with your feelings and where you're at, and also be selective in making sure that what you're seeking is on offer on the other side.
Yes.
And that's where, you know, professionals like yourself, Belinda, like if that's not showing up or that's not on offer in your current support circle, I'm doing that support circle, then you might have to seek it elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's really important too.
Yeah.
Okay. So different ways grief might look. And I was compiling this list, and I was thinking of, first of all, mums who may already have a child and are trying to conceive a second. And that's, I guess I was feeling into my own experience and going, okay, I was going through a lot of grief. I was pregnant, and you know, how did that show up? And a lot of it, I feel like for me and maybe for others, is around frustration, irritability, you know, that quick to anger. And often anger is above sadness. We tend to do feelings that are easier, because sadness is one of those ones that's, you know, it's not an easy one to express and to sit in. So it's good to check out whether those are actually the core feeling or if there's something underneath.
So true, so true. Yeah, is my feeling here actually anger, or am I angry that I'm feeling sad and I don't know what to do about it?
Yeah.
Or am I hurt, or am I feeling shame? like those emotions that sit underneath that aren't as socially acceptable or easy.
Yeah. And, you know, I think of it, it's easy to fly off the handle at someone, or to be an example that everyone's leaving their stuff around the house, than to actually sit and just really, God, today's a hard day, and I'm just devastated. Like, that is, because again, anger gets the shopping done, anger gets dinner cooked. Like, it's actually quite functional in day-to-day life, whereas completely falling in a heap on the couch doesn't get you to work. It doesn't get dinner cooked. And that might be, you might need to carve some space out in your life to give that those feelings the opportunity to kind of come. Other ways that grief. Oh yeah, busyness, overscheduling, over-planning. It's not the opposite, but it's not leaving a spare second in your day for it to kind of creep in. That's the best way I can think of it. You're just not letting it in. It can present as physical symptoms, like loss of appetite, tummy ache, constipation, diarrhea, headaches, body pain. There's lots of ways. Like, grief is a very heavy emotion. You might be extremely tired and exhausted. And again, if you've got young children, it's a bit like perinatal mood disorders. Is it exhaustion or is it postnatal depression? A lot of them have the same symptoms. So that's where perhaps it's helpful to get some outside professional eyes on it, to kind of pull it apart with you and figure out what is what, so that you can respond to it appropriately.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of grief. That's a bit about disenfranchised grief, compound grief, and how it might be showing up.
Yeah.
How it might be presenting. The model of grief, like I said, there's lots of them that I wanted to touch on today, and I find I use this with most of my clients because it's really practical. It's really, and especially for this type of grief and the demographic that you're working with. So, dual processing model, it's two sides: the loss orientation and the grieving, and it's the restoration orientation and the moving forward. And I hate using the word normally. What we hope is that people kind of oscillate between the two. They'll spend time, making plans, looking for the future, like getting on with life. And then they'll spend time in the grieving and the loss. So again, there's no right way to do this. Some people will do blocks of this and blocks of this. Some people will move through it on an hourly basis, daily basis. It really doesn't, there's no right way. Some people tend to be one or the other. Some people will be more comfortable or more just their personality or preference to the other. And this is where in relationship, it can look to one person like you are not grieving, this person over here that's just getting on with life and just, it can look like you're pretending nothing's happened and that you're just moving on. And then to the other, that you're just stuck in this helpless, hopeless space and that this isn't serving you, and why can't you be more positive? So this is where it's good to kind of acknowledge and to look at where your natural preference is, where perhaps your partner's natural preference is, so that you can, I guess, hold that. We're really good at making up stories and fantasies and assumptions about what other people are doing. That this means, making plans that they don't have any feelings, they don't care. I'm trying to think of another one. That they're not in touch with their emotions, or that you can even like make up things that they're really strong and capable, and if you're over here that you're not, and that there's something wrong. You know, like there's lots of things that we kind of
labels on either of them, isn't there? Like as you say, like and you say like one's no better than the other. It's just where you're at in that given point in time, and acknowledging both is so important.
And just to hold that this other person might be in a completely different space to you, and that's okay. And there might be benefits that you can offer each other in that.
What would some of those benefits be, do you think?
Well, I'm thinking of people who tend to just get on with it and let's plan, and there may be a resistance, there may be a fear to sitting over this side. And quite often, you know, those sad feelings, for a lot of people, there is that fear that once they start having those feelings, that they're going to get stuck in it. They're going to last, you know, a week. It's not often the case. Just like we're not happy 100% of the time, the feelings have beginning, middle, end. It's just the lack of experience or knowing that you'll move through those feelings just like you'll move through happiness. You don't stay happy 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So you can do really like gentle things. You could, you know, watch a movie that really pulls at heartstrings. And, you know, just have a good old cry. And sometimes having a cry about something else, you know, obviously it's going to hit you as well, but it feels safer and it's gentler, and it's, you know, if the feeling does become too much, great, it's about that person and their experience and what's happening there. And so you can kind of you know, just ease and touch on it, and then you go back to, great, that was a good movie, let's go mow the lawn, or whatever it is. Let's go coffee.
But seeing it for the movie like almost gives permission, doesn't it? Like it's this outside kind of stimuli that gives permission.
Yeah, and the other one I often recommend is a song. There'll be some songs.
Gosh, yeah.
Everyone can think of a song that touches them deeply. Songs usually go for about 3.5, 4 minutes. So again, you know, you can put on the song, even cue, you know, your favourite song afterwards. Know that you're going to do that for 3.5 minutes. You're going to sit in it, you're going to feel it, and then boomtown, your favourite song comes up, and you might play that a couple of times, and then, so it's about creating opportunities to touch, and the same the other way. So if you're perhaps sitting more on this side and this is where you generally are, you know, set a timer for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and really work on just finding the joy, the pleasure, the gratitude in that 5 minutes. So for 5 minutes, you just, and it may be easier to do it with someone else, you know, for 5 minutes, I'm just going to listen to you, Belinda, and just celebrate all the wonderful things that are happening in your life right now.
Yeah.
And then you can build on that, or, you know, you can schedule that in every day. Okay, 20 minutes every day. I'm just going to open the blinds. I'm going to make my favorite tea. I'm going to put on my favorite outfit, put on my favorite songs, even though I kind of have this massive resistance to them and I hate them at the moment. I'm going to do it for 20 minutes, and I might even dance a bit, or I might even sing along, or I might sit out in my favorite chair in the sun, whatever it is, just to give yourself the opportunity to move. And that will then help, obviously, move your feelings within you rather than not touching.
And I like the touching on on both sides. But what I feel that people who are always in the positive might be missing is the ability to complete that cycle and fully see that emotion through. Because if they're in denial and not going there, it's just always going to be there under the surface.
And this is where the compounding bit kind of comes back into it, right? That works with this grief that you're experiencing now. You can still go to work, your relationship's pretty good, you can turn up as a parent or a whatever, work colleague, but if you don't acknowledge it, if you don't spend time expressing, having the feeling, you're right, it just sits there, it's not going anywhere, which is another, another really good, if there is a good thing about grief, is that we have to be ready. And so you said the word denial. Grief can sit there for a long time. And until you have the time and space and capacity, given that it's not compounding, because when that happens, sometimes you're full to the brim and there's no real other choice. But you can hold on to it until you're ready. And I think that's an important part in both sides. If your partner's on the other doing something different to you, they might be in denial, and that's in another model, one of the steps, but it's an important one, and it's not one that we can rush for another person. We can't make them, it's a bit like, haven't you got over that already? We can't hurry someone up through their process. We can role model, and I guess that's the best way, is to do your grief, to support yourself, to get in touch with it and to find the support, the information, the self-care, whatever it is that you need. And, if someone is reluctant to go there, they'll be watching. They'll be seeing that, you've made it through, that you didn't fall in a heap, or that you did, but you've got back up again and off you went. And so the best thing to do is to work on yourself. And often, you hear someone say, they're in denial, or they don't want to touch on the emotion. They're just sweeping it under the rug. Notice what you're saying about the other person and just flip it. Like, if you can spot it, you've got it. So come back to you. What is it that you're in denial about? What is it that you don't want to touch on? And go and focus. I say this, love and kindness. Go focus on you. And again, that will then model and support your partner through their own process.
Because there's even some distraction and busyness in focusing on them, isn't there? Like,
it's a great way to avoid your own feelings, is to focus on somebody else's. It's much easier too. I totally understand.
Yeah.
And I've only got one more kind of point, and that was in relationships. Quite often we expect the other person, and this is kind of like a social norm, you find the person, they're your everything, they're supposed to be with you through thick or thin. And quite often with grief and things like trying to conceive, where there's not much there's not many, like, thinking TV shows, there's not much resources modeling of how to support each other through this process. So it's pretty much two individuals doing their best to figure it out as they go.
Yeah.
Which, in a high stakes, high stressful, high emotional kind of hurdle, challenge situation can be really hard and taxing on a couple.
Very.
So going back to needing, wanting, and we all have needs and wants, and potentially your partner not being able to offer that to you. their own, they might have their own grief that might be different to yours. They may be grieving completely different things in the same journey. So there might be a real mismatch there. They might be doing a different thing in terms of oscillating between grieving and moving on. And it's really important that in those situations that the couple themselves or the individuals or one individual goes outside the relationship for support. I have so many, and I'd be the same. So many of us, so many of my clients, when they're in this really stressful, challenging period, a lot of what I hear is they're not doing this, they don't support me, I feel really missed, I feel really let down, and part of it is not articulating what they need and how that looks like. But the second part is your partner is going through the same or different or more than what you are, and we may not be aware of it. And they don't have the capacity. They're needing that as well. So you're both going to each other going, hey, where are you? I need you to turn up for me, and you're not supporting me, and this is what I need. And neither of you are are in a place where you're able to offer that. And that's where it's really important for the couple, individual, because that will still make a difference to the couple.
Definitely.
Go outside and get the support, get the understanding, get the acknowledgement by this group. Be validated, have everything like normalized. Yeah. It is happening. It is happening to you. Yes, we see you. Yeah. Is so important.
Without a doubt. So the biggest thing I hear in fertility forums is, well, two key things that play into this. There's the insensitivities of people who haven't gone through it. They have no idea. They're going to say things that are insensitive, that hurt you, that trigger you, no doubt about it, because they don't understand. How can they? They haven't been through it. So that's not going to be your support network, of course. So you need, I always had an IVF buddy. Like, no, that's not true. I didn't always, because I was too ashamed to let people in and reach out to people for a long time. But then when I finally did, it was invaluable. Like having that person there who was on the same journey, no one's exactly the same, but similar kind of journey to bounce off and vent to, who wasn't going to try and fix me either. I had to teach my husband that. I had to teach him to just stand there and hold me while I did my ugly cry, not to try and fix me. But it took a long time to get to that point. And I also had to learn as well, exactly as you said, like he wasn't going to be that support network. And he couldn't be, because he was going through things his own way. He never wanted to go to a counsellor, but I did. I sought the therapy support without a doubt, and that helped, because it was my body that was being poked and prodded and examined and put under and dug out and all the rest. So but it didn't mean the relationship was perfect. But I tell you what, we are so much stronger now because of everything that we learnt of how to interact in a challenging situation.
Well, and yeah, I think that's a really good point, in that, challenges, life will knock us down. It will get messy, it will get hard.
Yeah.
And these are opportunities. They're going to be difficult. They're going to stretch you. But just hearing you speak, then the skills, the connection has deepened. Like some beautiful things, life-enhancing, relationship-enhancing things come out of it.
Yeah.
That makes life richer. So, yeah, if one person goes and has counselling, even your husband trying to fix, this is, typically that's what men do.
Oh, particularly an engineer.
Sorry?
Particularly an engineer.
Right, perfect. So that's, you know, partner upset, fix. Do whatever you need to fix. And even in that, like being able to go and say, look, I'm really upset. I don't need you to fix it. What I need is this, you to hold me. I'm going to do my crying thing. And in the end, I just need a really good squeeze. Like they're important things that you learn from seeking help outside. You'll learn different relationship, communication, dynamics. Like, so many things can come and improve the relationship if you're both struggling to kind of meet each other.
Yeah. If you're both, if both sets of coping mechanisms are empty, like you're not.
Well, and if you cope in different ways, and that's not.
Yeah.
We often think that there's the one way, the right way. There's lots of ways. And I guess too, it's about figuring out what it is that you need. A bit like, just do you, how to ask for it, where to ask for it, and being okay with outsourcing that if it's not in your relationship at the moment. Long term, the relationship will benefit from you going outside, and getting that support.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure. I hope there's some useful stuff in that. I hope that people can take little practical or usable snippets from that, and perhaps you'll have some insight into perhaps what you're doing or most comfortable with, being able to see your partner and perhaps with a different lens.
Having that empathy for them as well, and that compassion,
which again is really hard when
when you're in the shit as well.
Yes. So again, having empathy and compassion for where you're at and what you're capable of, and not expecting unrealistic things from yourself. Having some healthy boundaries around what you can offer outside of you. Day to day, week to week.
Beautiful. Well, if anyone has any questions, the screen I've been on, I haven't been able to see if anyone's had any questions. I'll just quickly duck back to Facebook, see if there's been any, but just double check. I haven't seen any questions come through, but please do pops any questions in the comments. Tanya and I can, and well, you know, this is a topic that you're obviously quite passionate about, and I love it because it is so important. Hearing, you know, what you're talking about, those hidden things that could mean that you just might need to stop and, as you said, put aside some time to really process what's going on in that busyness. Oh my goodness, I was guilty of that. Like in the first 18 months, I did everything in my power not to have to acknowledge that this was hard. So it's definitely a thing. And I think there's a lot of women, they're used to succeeding, they're used to achieving. And then all of a sudden, this thing that should be just so natural and come so easily isn't happening. And it's like, no, hang on, no. I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. Why is it happening? And it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah, there's so many hopes and dreams that you're mourning in that process. Just listening to you talk, like time frames, being pregnant when your friends are pregnant, working it in with what you had planned for your career. There's so much that can come up in that process that you were grieving. How you thought, you know, you and your partner would conceive, you know, with this romantic, intimate, like beautiful, and now it's medicalized and it's appointments and it's schedules and it's, you know, like there's a lot of grief in that as well, potentially.
everyone,
That's right. That's right. For some people, it's like, it's just, I've just got to do it. But for others, it's like, no, it's real grief to grieve.
Yeah. There's always a spectrum, and neither is good or bad or yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we'll say group this morning. Thank you for offering to talk about this topic. I know, as I said, there was lots of interest about it, and I really hope that for those of you who are watching or are going to watch this later, that you've found some value in it. And as I said, just pop any questions in the comments or reach out individually. And this group is a place where you can express your grief, where your grief will be validated and acknowledged and heard and supported. So that's what we're here for. So have a wonderful day, and I'll be back on in a couple of weeks' time to share another personal story of someone's fertility journey, a beautiful woman who is going to be sharing her story with us. So you'll hear more about that within the group. But bye for now. Thank you.